The crystal spires of Zephyr Prime caught the light of 3 suns and threw rainbows across the city below. For 1,000 years the Zephyrians had lived in peace. Their bodies were made of living glass that sang when they moved. Their cities were works of art that took centuries to grow. They had never known war. That changed when the black ships came. Elder Kesthi stood on the highest tower of the central spire, watching the horizon burn. The harvester machines had been eating their way across the galaxy for months now. World after world fell silent. The machines didn't want to talk. They didn't want to trade. They just consumed everything and moved on. "Elder, we must evacuate the outer cities," said Yithmar, her voice like wind chimes in a storm. The younger Zephyrian's crystal form flickered with fear colors. Kesthi's ancient body hummed a low, sad note. "Where would we go? They have taken the Veltar system. The Hingari colonies are gone. Even the mighty Cortesh Empire lasted only 3 days." Through the crystal walls they could see the refugee ships landing. Beings from a dozen worlds crowded the landing pads. The lucky ones had escaped with their lives. Most had lost everything. The ground shook. In the distance, a mountain exploded into fire and smoke. The harvesters had found the mining colonies. "The fleet?" asked Yithmar. "Destroyed." Kesthi's voice cracked like breaking glass. Admiral Vorth sent a final message before the communication cut out. "The harvesters tore through our ships like they were made of paper." The Zephyrian fleet had been beautiful. Sleek ships that moved, like dancers through space. They were built for exploration and trade, not war. Against the brutal efficiency of the harvester machines, they had been worse than useless. Another explosion lit the sky. Closer this time. "Elder, perhaps, we should consider the old ways," Yithmar said carefully. Kesthi turned to look at her. The old ways. The emergency frequencies that hadn't been used in 3 centuries. The distress calls that reached out to anyone. Anything that might help. "You know what those frequencies might summon?" Kesthi said. "I know what's coming if we don't use them," Yithmar replied. They stood in silence as another city died in the distance. The harvesters moved like a plague across the planet. Their machines were simple but effective. They landed, consumed everything useful, and built more of themselves. No negotiation, no mercy, just endless mechanical hunger. "Show me the old communication array," Kesthi said finally. They descended into the deep levels of the spire, where the ancient technology waited. The emergency beacon was old, built when the galaxy was a younger, more dangerous place. Back when wars between species were common. Back when desperate times called for desperate measures. The control room was thick, with dust. The crystals that powered the beacon were dark, waiting. "Are you certain, Elder?" asked Yithmar. "The Council of Worlds banned these frequencies for good reasons." Kesthi placed her hand on the activation crystal. It began to glow with soft blue light. "The Council of Worlds is gone, child. The Cortesh Empire is gone. The Veltar Federation is gone. Soon we will be gone too unless we try everything." The beacon came alive. Ancient circuits hummed with power. The transmitter reached out across the galaxy, broadcasting on frequencies that civilized species had agreed never to use again. "This is Elder Kesthi of Zephyr Prime," she said into the transmitter. "Our world is dying. Our people are dying. The harvester machines consume everything in their path. We have tried to fight them and failed. We have tried to run from them and failed. If anyone can hear this message, we offer everything we have. Our technology, our knowledge, our wealth. Please help us, we are running out of time." The message went out on loop. Over and over, the desperate plea broadcast across the galaxy. To anyone who might be listening. To anyone who might care. Hours passed. The city shook as the harvesters moved closer. Emergency alerts filled the communication channels. The outer districts were falling. The beautiful crystal gardens were being torn apart and fed into the machines. "Elder, we're receiving something," Yithmar said suddenly. The response came on an old military frequency. The voice was harsh, speaking in the common galactic tongue with a strange accent. "This is Admiral Sarah Chen of the Terran Defense Corps. We received your distress call. What is your location?" Kesthi and Yithmar looked at each other in confusion. "Terran," whispered Yithmar. "I thought they were extinct." Kesthi activated the transmitter. "We are in the Zephyr system, 3rd planet, but forgive me. We were told that the Terrans disappeared centuries ago." A pause. Then a sound that might have been laughter, but held no humor in it. "We didn't disappear. We were asked to leave. The galaxy decided we were too dangerous to play with others. The voice paused again. Guess they changed their minds. Can you help us? Kesthi asked. The harvesters are almost at the capital city. We have maybe hours before. We'll be there in 6 hours. The voice cut her off. Keep your heads down until then. The transmission ended. Yithmar's crystal body was flickering between colors rapidly. Elder, the Terrans, they were quarantined for a reason. The old records say they were violent, unpredictable. They came from a world so dangerous that it killed most things that tried to live on it. Kesthi looked out at the burning horizon. And now such beings are coming to help us. Or to finish what the harvesters started, Yithmar said quietly. The hours crawled by. The harvesters had taken half the planet. Their machines moved in perfect formation, consuming cities and turning them into more machines. The few remaining Zephyrian ships tried to evacuate civilians, but there were too many people and not enough ships. When the 6 hours were up, nothing happened. The sky remained empty except for the smoke from burning cities. Maybe they're not coming, Yithmar said. Then the stars went out. Not all of them, just the ones in a large patch of sky directly overhead. Something massive was blotting out the light. Daycloak, a voice said over the emergency channels. The ships that appeared were nothing like the elegant vessels the galaxy was used to. They were huge, dark things that looked like they had been built for war and nothing else. Their hulls were scarred and pitted. Weapons bristled from every surface. They didn't look like ships so much as flying fortresses. More ships appeared. Then more. Soon the sky was full of them, blocking out the stars. This is Admiral Chen, the harsh voice said over all frequencies. Any Zephyrians still alive down there? Kesthi activated her transmitter with shaking hands. We are here. Many of us. The harvesters control most of the planet. Not for much longer, the Admiral replied. Fair warning, things are about to get loud. The first human weapons fired moments later, and the night turned to day. The human ships didn't just attack the harvesters, they obliterated them. Elder Kesthi watched from her tower as beams of pure energy cut through the night sky. Where the beams touched the harvester machines, they simply ceased to exist. Not destroyed, erased. The mechanical invaders that had seemed so unstoppable were being swept away like dust in a hurricane.
By the 3 suns, whispered Yithmar. Look at them move. The human ships moved nothing like the graceful vessels the galaxy was used to. They moved like predators. Fast, brutal turns that should have torn them apart. They dove through the atmosphere like missiles, firing constantly.
Their weapons never seemed to run out of power. A group of harvester ships tried to escape into orbit. The human vessels were waiting for them. What followed wasn't a battle. It was a slaughter. The harvesters' energy shields, which had stopped every weapon the galaxy could throw at them, lasted seconds against human firepower. This is Admiral Chen to all Zephyrian forces. The harsh voice came over the communication channels. Stay in your cities. We're coming down to clean house. The first human dropships landed an hour later. They hit the ground hard, their engines making the crystal spires ring like bells. The ships were built like tanks with wings, ugly, functional, and covered in weapon systems. Kesthi and a group of other elders waited at the landing site. They needed to meet these saviors even if the stories about them were true, even if they were as dangerous as the old records claimed. The dropship's ramp lowered with a hiss of hydraulics. The first human to emerge was tall and broad, wearing armor that looked like it had been through 100 wars. Her face was hard, with scars that spoke of violence survived. Behind her came more humans, all armed, all moving with the deadly grace of natural killers. I'm Admiral Sarah Chen, the woman said, her voice even harsher in person. You're Kesthi? I am, Kesthi replied, her crystal voice trembling slightly. We thank you for coming to our aid. Chen looked around at the crystal city, her eyes taking in everything. Pretty place. Shame about the infestation. She gestured to where smoke still rose from the outer districts. How many harvesters are left on the planet? We don't know exactly. Thousands of machines, maybe tens of thousands. Not for much longer. Chen activated a device on her wrist. Colonel Martinez, what's the situation? A new voice crackled through the speaker. We've got them boxed in, Admiral. They've pulled back to 3 main hives, ugly things, They've been eating the landscape to build more of themselves. Good. Begin the cleansing protocol. With pleasure, ma'am. Kesthi didn't understand what the cleansing protocol was, but the way the humans said it made her crystal form flicker with unease. Admiral Chen, she said carefully, perhaps we should discuss terms for... Terms? Chen looked at her with something that might have been amusement. You sent a distress call. We answered. The only terms that matter are that we kill everything. That's trying to kill you. More human ships were landing now, not just dropships but massive cargo vessels. They disgorged vehicles that looked like they were designed to fight on the most hostile worlds imaginable. Tanks that moved on treads and legs, flying machines bristling with weapons, soldiers in armor so thick they looked more like walking fortresses than people. Your equipment, Yithmar observed, trying to sound diplomatic. It's very military. A human soldier nearby laughed. It wasn't a pleasant sound. Lady, we've been at war for 300 years. Everything we build is military. At war with whom? Asked Kesthi. Everyone, Admiral Chen replied simply. When the galaxy decided we were too dangerous and told us to leave, they made a mistake. They thought we'd just find some quiet corner and die out. Instead, we found things in the dark between stars that make your harvester problem look like a minor pest control issue. The ground shook as explosions echoed from the distance. The humans were fighting the harvesters and, from the sound of it, winning easily. The old records, Yithmar said hesitantly. They say your species comes from a world classified as a Class 12 death world. Class 15, actually, Chen corrected. They updated the classification after they got a better look at Earth. Everything on our planet tries to kill everything else. The weather tries to kill you. The plants try to kill you. Even the bacteria tries to kill you. She smiled, and it was not a reassuring expression. Made us good at killing back. More explosions in the distance. Then silence. Hive 1 is down, came Colonel Martinez's voice. Moving to Hive 2. How are you destroying them so quickly? Kesthi asked. Our weapons barely scratched them. Your weapons were designed to disable ships and force surrenders, Admiral Chen explained. Our weapons were designed to kill things that don't surrender, that don't negotiate, that just keep coming until they're all dead. She looked at the crystal city around them. Nice civilization you've got here. Peaceful, pretty, completely helpless. It wasn't said as an insult, just a statement of fact. That somehow made it worse. The human soldiers were efficient in a way that frightened the Zephyrians. They set up defensive positions with practiced ease. They established communication networks. They treated wounded with calm competence. But underneath it all was something that made the crystal being's instincts scream warnings. These humans moved like pack hunters. They watched everything with eyes that calculated threats and weaknesses. When they spoke to each other, it was in short, clipped phrases that conveyed maximum information with minimum words. They were polite to the Zephyrians, but in the way that a predator might be polite to prey, it had no current intention of eating. Hive 2 is down, Martinez reported. Hive 3 is putting up more resistance. They've adapted to our initial assault patterns. Adapted how? Chen asked. They're building countermeasures, trying to match our weapon frequencies, getting smarter. Then we get nastier. Deploy the Nova charges. Ma'am, that might be overkill. Colonel, when something adapts to your weapons, you don't give it time to finish adapting. You escalate until it stops moving. The final explosion was visible from orbit. A pillar of fire rose from the distant Hive location, reaching up into the atmosphere. The shockwave rattled the crystal spires and made every Zephyrian on the planet sing in harmonics of fear. When the fire faded, there was nothing left where Hive 3 had been. Not ruins, not debris, just a perfectly smooth crater that glowed with residual heat. All hostile forces eliminated, Martinez reported. Planet is clean. Admiral Chen nodded as if she'd expected nothing less. Good work. Set up a perimeter patrol. I want sensors watching for any harvester signals in system. She turned back to Kesthi. Your planet is safe. We'll stay until we're sure none of those mechanical parasites are left in your system. We cannot thank you enough, Kesthi managed. How can we ever repay you? You already did. You asked for help. Chen looked up at the human ships patrolling overhead. The galaxy threw us out because we were inconvenient. Told us we were too violent for civilized space, but when civilized space needed violence, they called us. She looked back at the Zephyrian elder. Funny how that works, Kesthi realized, with growing unease that the humans weren't planning to leave anytime soon. and she was beginning to understand why the galaxy had been so afraid of them. The saviors had arrived. But what did you do when your saviors were more terrifying than the thing they'd saved you from? 3 days after the Harvesters died, the first galactic response came. Elder Kesthi was meeting with Admiral Chen in the restored council chambers when Yithmar burst in, her crystal form flickering with urgent colors. Elder, ships are arriving. Galactic Council vessels. Chen didn't look surprised. She sipped from a cup of the bitter liquid the humans called coffee and shrugged. Took them longer than I expected. Usually they show up within hours when someone spots us. Through the crystal walls they could see the ships dropping out of hyperspace. Sleek white vessels with the golden symbols of the Galactic Council. Beautiful ships built for diplomacy and trade. They looked like toys compared to the massive human war vessels hanging in orbit. Council Ship Harmony requesting immediate communication with planetary leadership, came the transmission. Kesthi activated the communication array. This is Elder Kesthi of Zephyr Prime. We receive you, Harmony. The image that appeared was of Counselor Vex Rain, a tall being with blue skin and too many eyes. Kesthi had met her at trade conferences. She was known for being reasonable and calm. She did not look calm now. Elder Kesthi, we received reports of human military activity in your system. Please confirm that you are safe and not under duress. Admiral, Chen leaned into view of the transmitter. They're safe, Counselor. We killed everything that was trying to kill them. The effect on Vex Rain was immediate. Her blue skin went pale and her eyes widened in fear. Human, you're not supposed to be here. Neither were the Harvesters, Chen replied calmly. But here we all are. The Terran species was restricted from galactic space under Treaty 447B, Vex Rain said, her voice shaking slightly. Your presence here is a violation of galactic law. Chen's expression didn't change. Your treaty said we couldn't enter galactic space. It didn't say we couldn't respond to distress calls sent to us. The distress call was a mistake. No mistake, Kesthi interrupted. We sent that call deliberately. The Harvesters had destroyed our fleets and were consuming our world. The humans saved us. Vex Rain looked between them, clearly struggling with the situation. Elder, you don't understand what you've done. These beings, their species is classified as a galactic threat. They're too violent, too unpredictable, too effective, Admiral Chen said quietly. The silence stretched. Finally, Vex Rain spoke. Again, Terran Admiral, the Council demands that you withdraw your forces immediately. This system will be placed under Council protection. From what? Chen asked. The Harvesters are dead. All of them. Your Council ships couldn't stop them, but we did in 3 days. That's exactly the problem. Vex Rain's diplomatic calm cracked. You didn't capture them for study. You didn't try to communicate with them. You just destroyed them utterly. That's what we do, Chen said simply. It's what we're good at. More Council ships were arriving. Dozens of them, forming a cordon around the human fleet. Kesthi watched with growing fear as the beautiful diplomatic vessels surrounded the ugly human warships. Admiral, Yithmar whispered, they outnumber you greatly. Chen glanced at the displays showing the ship positions. Quality over quantity, she said, then louder. Counselor, you should probably back your ships off. My crews get nervous when people point weapons at them. Our weapons are not active, Vex Rain protested. Neither are ours, Chen replied. Yet. The threat hung in the air like a blade. The humans had wiped out an entire Harvester infestation in 3 days. What could they do to a Council fleet if they chose to? Admiral Chen, came a new voice over the communications. This is Fleet Commander Zheltos of the 4th Council Fleet. You are ordered to surrender your vessels for inspection and prepare for transport to Council space for trial. Chen's laugh was harsh. Commander, the last time your people transported humans for trial, we ended up banned from the galaxy. Not making that mistake again. Then you refuse to comply with galactic law? I refuse to comply with laws made by people who couldn't protect themselves from a bunch of metal bugs. The insult hit home. Several Council ships moved closer, their previously hidden weapons now clearly visible. The human ships didn't react at all, which somehow made them more threatening. Kesthi stood up abruptly. Stop! All of you, stop! Both fleets paused. The Zephyrian Elder's crystal form was blazing with light, her voice carrying across all frequencies. Counselor Vex Rain, Fleet Commander Zheltos, you speak of law and order. Where was that law when the Harvesters consumed the Veltar system? Where was that order when they destroyed the Cortesh Empire? Your fleets arrived after the danger was past, just as they always do. Elder, Vex Rain said carefully. You're upset, traumatized, you don't understand. I understand perfectly. Kesthi's voice rang like a struck bell. When we were dying, we called for help. They answered. You did not. We couldn't respond. In time, you couldn't respond at all. Your weapons are too weak, your ship's too fragile, your army's too gentle. You've spent so long being civilized that you've forgotten how to fight. The silence that followed was deafening. Finally, Fleet, Commander Geltos spoke. Elder, the humans are dangerous, their methods are extreme. They solve every problem with violence. Admiral Chen stood up slowly. Commander, in the last 300 years since you kicked us out of the galaxy, how many species have gone extinct? How many worlds have been lost to threats you couldn't handle? No answer came. I can tell you exactly, Chen continued. 47 species extinct. 312 worlds lost to various threats. The Devourer crisis lasted 6 years, and killed billions because you spent 4 of those years trying to negotiate with something that only understood hunger. The Shadow War decimated 12 systems because you couldn't adapt to an enemy that didn't follow your rules of engagement. She walked to the window, looking out at the restored Crystal City. We've been watching from the dark. Every time you face something that doesn't want to talk, doesn't want to trade, doesn't want to play by your rules, you lose. Because you've forgotten something important. Which is? Vex Rain asked quietly. Sometimes the only way to protect civilization is to be uncivilized. Another voice crackled over the communications, one that made everyone freeze. This is Captain Rodriguez of the TDC Vengeance. Admiral, we've got Harvester Signals 3 systems. Over. Looks like a major infestation. The locals are broadcasting distress calls. Chen nodded. How major? At least 50 hive ships. Maybe more. They're hitting the Rillan colonies. The council representatives went very quiet. The Rillan were a peaceful species, even more fragile than the Zephyrians. If the harvesters had found them? Admiral, Fleet Commander Geltos said slowly. The 4th Council Fleet could assist. No. Chen's voice was flat. You've made it clear we're not welcome in galactic space. This is our problem now. You can't handle 50 hive ships alone, Admiral. Chen smiled, and it was not a pleasant expression. Commander, we didn't come to this system alone. This was just the advance force. As if summoned by her words, the space around Zephyr Prime began to shimmer. More human ships decloaked. Not dozens this time, but hundreds. Massive vessels that dwarfed even the largest council ships. Fleet carriers bristling with weapons. Mobile shipyards. Hospital ships that looked like they were built to handle mass casualties. It was a war fleet, not built to patrol or explore or trade, built to find the worst things in the galaxy and kill them. This is Admiral Harrison of the 1st Fleet, a new voice announced. Chen, we heard you found some bugs that needed squashing. Copy that, Harrison. 47 harvester hives in the Rillan system. Want to see who gets there first? You're on. The human fleets began moving, leaving a small force to protect Zephyr Prime. As they prepared to jump to hyperspace, Admiral Chen looked at the council representatives one final time. Counselor, Commander, you have a choice. You can keep trying to stop us from protecting the galaxy, or you can get out of our way while we do the job you can't. The human fleets vanished into hyperspace, leaving the council vessels alone with the Zephyrians, and in the silence that followed, everyone realized that the galaxy had changed forever. The Galactic Council emergency session was called within hours of the human fleets disappearing into hyperspace. Representatives from 200 species gathered in the Great Crystal Amphitheater on Galaxis Prime, their voices creating a symphony of fear and outrage. Elder Kesthi watched the proceedings from her assigned seat, her crystal form flickering with nervous energy. She had been summoned to testify about the human incident, though everyone seemed to have already made up their minds about what had happened. The Terran species has violated the fundamental principles of galactic civilization, declared Speaker Forthcan, his tentacles writhing with indignation. They have returned to our space without permission, destroyed an entire mechanical species without attempting communication, and now threaten the stability of our entire region. Murmurs of agreement rippled through the assembly. The speaker gestured to a holographic display showing the Rillan system. 3 hours ago, human fleets arrived at Rillan Prime. What they found was indeed a harvester infestation of unprecedented scale. What they did about it? He paused dramatically. They wiped out 57 hive ships in 4 hours. No survivors. No prisoners, no attempt at peaceful resolution. The display showed footage from Rillan monitoring stations. The human attack was brutal and efficient. Their ships moved in perfect coordination, surrounding and destroying harvester vessels with mechanical precision. When the hive ships tried to escape, human interdiction vessels were waiting. When they tried to adapt, human weapons adapted faster. This is exactly why we banned them in the first place, said Counselor Thex, her crystalline voice sharp with fear. They don't fight wars, they commit genocide. The harvesters were already committing genocide, Kesthi said quietly. The assembly turned to look at her. Speaker Vorthkan's expression was not friendly. Elder Kesthi, you called them. You violated 3 centuries of galactic law by contacting a quarantined species. I saved my people, she replied simply. You endangered the entire galaxy. Do you have any idea what you've unleashed? Before Kesthi could answer, the chamber's communication system activated. A familiar harsh voice filled the amphitheater. This is Admiral Sarah Chen of the Terran Defense Corps. I believe you're discussing us. Panic rippled through the assembly. Security officers reached for weapons, then stopped when they realized how useless that would be. If the humans could patch into the Council's most secure facility, weapons wouldn't help anyway. How did you access this channel? Speaker Vorthkan demanded. We built most of your communication infrastructure 300 years ago. Chen replied calmly. We left ourselves some back doors. The implications of that statement hung in the air like a toxic cloud. The galaxy's entire communication network was compromised, had been compromised for centuries. What do you want? The speaker asked. To talk, face to face. The Rillan are safe, by the way. All 7 billion of them. You're welcome. You murdered an entire species. We exterminated a plague. There's a difference. The main doors to the chamber hissed open. Admiral Chen walked in, flanked by 2 human soldiers. She wasn't wearing full armor, just a simple military uniform, but somehow that made her more intimidating rather than less. The soldiers moved like hunting cats, their eyes constantly scanning for threats. The assembly fell silent. Most of them had never seen a human in person. The old records described them as relatively small bipeds, no more dangerous than any other species. The reality was different. These humans moved with predatory grace. Their eyes held intelligence and calculation. They looked like they could kill everything in the room and were actively considering it. 300 years, Chen said, walking to the center of the amphitheater. That's how long you've had to solve the problems we used to help with. How's that working out for you? We've maintained galactic peace, Speaker Vorthkan began. Peace, Chen laughed. You've maintained ignorance. Every time something dangerous shows up, you try to talk to it. When that fails, you try to buy it off. When that fails, you call for help from species like the Zephyrians, who are even less equipped to fight than you are. She gestured to the holographic display. The Harvesters were just the latest example. Before them, it was the Shadow Fleet. Before that, the Devourer swarms. Before that, the Void Walkers. Each time billions died while you tried to find a peaceful solution to something that only understood violence. Violence is not the answer to everything, protested Counselor Vex Rain. No, Chen agreed. But it's the answer to some things, and those are exactly the things you can't handle. She walked closer to the assembled representatives. Several of them shrank back in fear. You want to know what we've been doing? For 3 centuries? We've been fighting the things that live in the dark between stars, things that make the Harvesters look friendly. We've been protecting the galaxy from threats you never even knew existed. What kind of threats? Asked a voice from the upper galleries. Chen's expression darkened. The kind that eat stars. The kind that turn entire systems into nurseries for their young. The kind that exist in dimensions you can't perceive and only become visible when they're feeding on your souls. The chamber was dead silent now. While you've been having trade negotiations and cultural exchanges, we've been in constant warfare against things that would consume this entire sector if we let them through. The quarantine didn't keep us away from you. It kept them away from you. Speaker Vorthkan found his voice. Even if that's true, it doesn't give you the right to violate our sovereignty. Your sovereignty? Chen's voice was soft, but carried clearly through the chamber. Speaker, your sovereignty extends exactly as far as your ability to defend it. When the Harvesters showed up, where was your sovereignty? When the Devourer crisis killed 4 billion sentients, where was your sovereignty? She turned to address the entire assembly. You exist because we let you exist. Every peaceful day you've had for the last 300 years was bought with human blood spilled in battles you never knew were happening. Prove it, said a new voice. Everyone turned to look at Counselor Jen Tai, an elderly representative known for her wisdom and skepticism. If what you say is true, prove it. Admiral Chen smiled. It was not a reassuring expression. She activated a device on her wrist, and holographic displays filled the air around the chamber. Star charts, battle reports, images of things that shouldn't exist. The Void Plague, contained at the cost of 2 entire human fleets. The Living Nebula, stopped 3 light years from your outer colonies by the sacrifice of 50,000 volunteers. The Dream Eaters, held at the Galactic Rim by Constant. Patrol ships that never return home. The images were horrifying. Creatures of impossible size and malevolence. Battles fought in space and dimensions that human minds weren't meant to comprehend. Ships and crews that faced annihilation so that others could sleep safely. This is what we've been doing while you've been pretending the galaxy is a safe, civilized place, Chen said quietly. This is why we don't negotiate. Why we don't take prisoners. Why we don't show mercy to existential threats. The silence stretched until Speaker Vorth Khan finally spoke. What do you want from us? Nothing, Chen replied. We're not asking for permission anymore. We're not asking for acceptance. We're telling you what's going to happen. She gestured and new displays appeared. Human fleets positioned throughout the galaxy. Bases being constructed in uninhabited systems. Defense networks going online. We're coming back. Not to your pretty core worlds where you have your parties and trade conferences. To the dark places, where the real threats live. We're going to do what we've always done. Fight the things that want to eat you. And if we object? The speaker asked. Chen looked at him for a long moment. Then you'll object alone. Because every species that faces an existential threat is going to remember that when they called for help we answered. You didn't. She turned and began walking toward the exit, her soldiers falling into step behind her. Admiral, called Elder Kesthi. What about my people? What about Zephyr Prime? Chen paused at the doorway. Anyone who wants our protection has it. Anyone who doesn't, won't. She left the assembly in silence, and in the minutes that followed, the representatives began to understand that the galaxy they knew was ending. Something new and darker was beginning, and whether they liked it or not, humanity was back. 6 months later, the galaxy had split into 2 very different worlds. The core systems continued much as they always had. Trade flowed between the peaceful species. Cultural exchanges happened on schedule. Diplomatic ceremonies proceeded with proper etiquette. The Galactic Council maintained that the human problem was temporary and would be resolved through proper channels. But on the rim, everything had changed. Elder Kesthi stood on the observation deck of the new defense station, orbiting Zephyr Prime. Through the transparent metal, she could see human ships patrolling the system. Not the graceful vessels the galaxy was used to, but ugly, efficient killers built for war. The morning reports, Elder, said Yithmar, approaching with a datapad. How many today? 17 more species have requested human protection. The Mandarin after the Shadow Fleet hit their outer colonies. The Pelax, after something they won't talk about, consumed 3 of their worlds. The entire Killik Federation voted to accept human defense pacts after... Yithmar paused. After they found what was left of the Harvester breeding stations. Kesthi nodded grimly. The humans hadn't just destroyed the Harvesters they'd encountered. They'd traced them back to their source. What they'd found in the deep dark between galaxies had terrified even the humans. Massive breeding complexes that stretched for light years. Millions of potential hive ships in various stages of construction, all of it feeding on the processed remains of consumed civilizations. The humans had destroyed it all, but not before documenting everything. The evidence had been shared with any species that wanted to see it. Most wished they hadn't. Any word from the core systems? The Council is still debating Resolution 782C, the one demanding human withdrawal from rim space. It's been in committee for 3 months now. Kesthi's crystal form flickered with amusement. Let me guess, they're still trying to find legal precedent for forcing a species that doesn't recognize their authority to follow their laws? Something like that. Oh, and Speaker Vorth Khan announced another peace conference. He wants to establish dialogue with the human leadership to find a mutually acceptable solution to the current crisis. And the human response? Admiral Chen said, and I quote, "We'll talk when they're ready to listen." A chime sounded through the station. The communication system activated with Admiral Chen's voice. Elder Kesthi, Please report to Conference Room 7. We have visitors. Kesthi made her way through the station corridors. The human facility was all sharp angles and efficient design. No beauty for beauty's sake, but everything worked perfectly. The humans had built it in 3 weeks, something that would have taken Zephyrian architects 3 years to design. Admiral Chen was waiting in the conference room, along with several other human officers Kesthi had learned to recognize. Captain Rodriguez, the Marine Commander, Commander Harrison, the logistics specialist, Dr. Patel, the xenobiology expert. But there were others there too. Aliens Kesthi didn't recognize. Elder, I'd like you to meet our new associates, Chen said. Commander Vexthul of the Mandari Defense Corps, Captain Krilset of the Pelax Fleet, and General Zhao Nin of the Keelik Federation. The 3 aliens looked nothing like the usual diplomatic representatives the galaxy was used to. They were scarred, hard-faced beings who moved with military precision. Warriors, not politicians. We represent 37 species who have accepted human protection, Commander Vexthul said, his voice harsh from breathing recycled air on too many combat ships. We're here to discuss the formation of the Rim Alliance. Kesthi felt her crystal form flicker with surprise. An alliance? A mutual defense pact, General Zhao Nin clarified. The core systems have made their position clear. They will not adapt to the new reality. They will continue to pretend the galaxy is a safe place where all problems can be solved with words. Meanwhile, Captain Krilset added, more threats emerge from deep space every month. The humans can't be everywhere at once, even with their fleets. We need to be able to defend ourselves. Admiral Chen activated a holographic display. It showed the galaxy divided into 2 regions. The inner core systems, stable and peaceful. The outer rim worlds, surrounded by defense grids and patrol fleets. The humans will provide military training, weapons technology, and strategic support, Chen explained. In return, the Alliance species will provide resources, bases, and personnel for joint operations. What about the Council? Kesthi asked. What about them? Commander Vexthul's tone was dismissive. When the Shadow Fleet attacked Mandari Prime, where was the Council? When the Void Hunters consumed the Pelax colonies, where were the Peacekeepers? When the breeding pits were discovered in Keelik space, who helped us sterilize them? He gestured toward the humans. These people showed up within hours of our distress calls. They didn't ask for permits or permissions. They didn't form committees to study the problem. They came and they fought and they saved our people. General Zhao Nin leaned forward. Elder, the Zephyrians were the first to call for help. Your people showed the galaxy that there was an alternative to slow death by committee. Now we're offering you the chance to be part of something larger. Kesthi looked at the display showing the proposed alliance. 53 species, hundreds of worlds, all of them on the galactic rim where the real dangers lurked. And if the Council objects? Admiral Chen's expression was grim. The Council can object all they want from their safe core worlds. But when the next existential threat emerges from dark space, who do you think will be ready to face it? A new voice came over the communication system. Admiral, this is Captain Singh aboard the Vigilance. We're receiving multiple distress calls from the Theta sector. Something's attacking the Veltar refugee colonies. Everyone in the room went still. The Veltar colonies were in core space, protected by Council fleets. Details, Captain? Unknown. Aggressors. The refugees are describing them as living shadows that eat light. Council ships in the area have gone silent. We're tracking multiple FTL signatures heading toward populated systems. Admiral Chen stood up slowly. How many ships can we get to Theta sector? 17 battle groups within 6 hours. 32 within 12 hours. Chen looked around the room at the assembled alien representatives. This is what I was talking about, something new, something dangerous, attacking civilians. The Council fleets can't handle it because they don't know how to fight shadows. But we do. You're going to help them, Kesthi said. It wasn't a question. Of course we are. That's what we do. Even though they've spent 6 months trying to force you out of the galaxy? Chen smiled grimly. Especially then, because when this is over, every species in the core systems is going to know that when the darkness came for them, we were the ones who drove it back. She activated her command console. Captain Singh, deploy all available battle groups to Theta sector. Rules of engagement are weapons free. Whatever these things are, they don't get to eat any more civilians on our watch. Copy that, Admiral. All ships prepare for immediate deployment. The humans began filing out of the conference room, moving with practiced efficiency toward battle. The alien representatives watched them go with expressions of awe and fear. "This is how it's going to be," General Zhao Nin said quietly. "The humans will fight the darkness and the rest of us will follow or be left behind." Kesthi looked out at the human fleet as it prepared to jump to hyperspace, hundreds of ships moving as one, heading toward danger that would make normal civilized beings run in terror. "Then we follow," she said finally. "Because the alternative is to sit in the dark alone, pretending we're safe while monsters eat the light." The fleet jumped to hyperspace, carrying humanity's protection to people who had spent months trying to reject it. And in that moment, the Rim Alliance was truly born. The galaxy had chosen sides. The core systems could keep their committees and their debates and their peaceful illusions. The Rim worlds would stand with the humans, facing the dark together, and, when the next threat came from the void between stars, it would find not a scattered collection of helpless civilizations, but a united front of species who had learned that sometimes the only way to preserve peace was to be very, very good at, or the Deathworlders were home.